Wayne Blanton here in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and we currently race here at Southern Indiana RC Speedway. So my buddy Paul Gardner here kind of put his thoughts into things, and we created a new class that we're really excited about, and we want to introduce that to you today. So our class is called the Spec10, and we've actually even created a little club here called Spec10 Mafia. And so Paul, tell us kind of your ideas here when you come up with Spec10 and kind of how you come up with the body scheme and the chassis design, so on and so forth.
Well, I think the first thing we need to talk about is there is essentially two types of racers, okay? You got the racers who are all competitive, want to win at all costs. And they'll buy the most expensive items, they'll buy 20 motors, they'll do whatever they got to do to win, and that's their only purpose for being at the track. Then you got the guys who just enjoy the hobby. And the guys who enjoy the hobby still want to be competitive, but they also want to have a good time. So the Spec10 comes at it from two different points. First, it's got to be cost effective. Guys don't want to buy a $1,000 car and go out and race it and tear it up. That's just the truth of the matter. Okay? Then we needed something not only cost effective, but that can still be competitive if done right.
Right.
So I chose an RJ Speed Spec10 chassis, where most of us are familiar with Legends. But the Spec10 has rear suspension, and it's going to make it a little more tunable for the track.
Absolutely.
Then my next step, once I chose a chassis that was fairly cost effective, was to come up with a motor ESC suspension or gear ratios and everything that I could spec out so that everybody had a fair shot at racing. You're still going to have to be able to drive. You're still going to have a certain amount of skill to do it. The guys with the most skill are still going to win if they have the most skill.
So Paul, correct me if I'm wrong here. You've created a class that is essentially based on skill.
Yes,
it's a racer's class. Yes, it's a driver's class.
It's all about the driver. We've taken the car, we've spec'd it out. I mean, we're all running the same components. We're all running the same motor tunes, and we'll get into motor tunes later. It's really more about having a good time, enjoying your racing, and being able to drive.
So Paul, there's two different body types that we're using in this class. Talk about those for a minute, and how you, or is there three now?
There's three body types.
Okay, so talk about how you come up with that idea.
All right, the bodies that we've chosen are the McAllister bomber bodies, part number 181 and 182, I believe. And then the RJ Speed bomber body. You can use all three of those bodies. The big thing about that is the bodies are square. Okay, so if you hit somebody in the back and you're doing a bump and run, you don't crash them. The bodies are aerodynamically challenged, to say the least. But that keeps everybody checked out. I mean, everybody is running the same bodies. Everybody's is dealing with the same issues. So it balances the whole field out. If you get a bump in the back, your car doesn't go plowing in the wall. You do a door check, it's no big deal. So that makes the class funner. You can rub, you can touch without destroying your car.
So these bomber bodies are completely wheels covered type bodies, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay.
So anyway, like we was talking about some of the gear ratios and things like that, we spec out the gear. So everybody's running the same spur gear. Everybody's running the same pinion gears.
Now you got two different pinion gear options, right?
Right.
It's a 46 or 47, right?
Right, a 46 or a 47.
Okay.
But everybody's running the same thing. We all have the same options. We're all using the same parts. And that keeps the cost down. It's not about the car. It's about the driver. And that is the key point of it, is with that chassis, it's not a big expensive chassis. You can't do too much, and it keeps everybody on a level playing field.
Man, that sounds awesome. So Paul, talk to us a little bit about how you tune these motors so that everybody's on an even playing field. Because I know that in most spec classes, people are buying hundreds of motors, this and that, and cherry picking these motors. And the guys that's got the, you know, who knows who type deal. So tell us how you're tuning these motors.
All right, these motors we started off for the most part with the Tour Motor 17.5 Red Can Phantom. The reason I chose that motor is because Phantom already kept them within a certain specification. All the stators were within said window, all the rotors were within, said parameters. That makes things a whole lot easier. Now, you could get unicorn motors that come out. It happens. Sure. Okay, so guys could buy lots of motors. To prevent that from occurring, what I've done is I've locked all the motors down to a particular kV value. And a kV value is basically an RPM. So if somebody's got a better stator, and if you use timing, for instance, but they have a better stator, then their motor's gonna run better, okay? By locking them down, you're essentially putting a rev limiter on it. The motor is only gonna pull to a certain RPM, okay? So it doesn't matter if you have a unicorn motor, we're tuning it out.
Right.
So if you have a weaker magnet or a stronger rotor, none of that matters. You're locking each one of them down. We put a tamper-proof screw in the back of them, and we check them at a semi-regular basis, like big events, big competitions. That way, everybody at least is running on the same running gear.
Yeah,
okay?
Everybody's got a fighting chance.
Yeah, everybody's got a fighting chance. We just went to the firecracker race up in Cleveland, Brunswick to be exact, and the top 5 guys all had their motors checked, and they were all within, I think, 1% of each other. You can't get any better than that.
No, there's some top 5, I think, was on the same lap.
Top four drivers. So it was a 100-lap race, 100 laps, and the top 4 drivers were still on the same lap.
Pretty cool.
So at any point, anybody really could have won.
Could have taken that.
Yeah, anybody could have won. And that's what it's about. It's
it's
about
racing.
having a good time, and you're doing a little racing too.
Yeah. That's outstanding.